Okay. This is the time of the big dilemma, whether I speak in English or in Greek. So first I would like to welcome our guests. It's an exceptional honor to have you here, and it's a deep honor, especially because here at the center of the ancient world, but also at the epicenter of contemporary political and philosophical dialogue, I think it's only appropriate to speak about the contemporary challenges and especially the relationship between Greece and the European Union with India, a top priority of our foreign policy and a top priority for the European Union. So thank you for being here with us. It's an exceptional honor. I would like to make an initial statement about India. And I know that not all of our guests are from India, but especially today we have to speak about India. So it is an exceptional country. I had the opportunity to visit India a couple of months ago in the context of the Raisina dialogues in order to just reaffirm that India is the rising star in the global landscape because India is the leading nation of the global south. It is the crossroads between the south and the north, of east and west. It is a rising star when it comes to growth, with a very intense role to perform within G20, with a future which sooner or later will bring India into the Security Council of the United Nations as a permanent member. And of course, a pioneer in terms of artificial intelligence, or in terms of protection of the environment in relation to all contemporary challenges. And it is only the reaffirmation that democracy has no limits, because if a nation of about 1.4 billion people can be a democracy, this is the best example of how a democracy can be constructive, can be performative, but above all can be meaningful. And meaningful democracy is exactly what India represents in the contemporary world. It is a year of democracy. As I said just before, half of the people in the world go to the polls this year. This is why this is going to be an exceptional year. And it's only important to say that we need to think very wisely what to do about our democracy in the future. Because we all realize that we're on some very risky times with two very strong wars in our broader region, with the situation in the Middle East only getting harder day by day, and with a spillover effect just out of our door, and with Russian aggression against Ukraine to be upscaling day by day, with the situation in Africa becoming truly intolerable, especially in the broader Sahel region, with authoritarian regimes, with civil wars, with natural catastrophes, and with gradually evolving civil wars. I think the global balance is truly shaken. This shouldn't, though, prevent us from organizing our future. And our future is the future of cooperation between states and between democracies. And this is exactly what is reflected in IMEC, in the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. Because this corridor is not essentially an economic corridor. It's a corridor of democracy and a corridor of peace. Because when you establish such a broad corridor between civilizations, between states, between very strong partners, what is happening is that you just establish prosperity between nations. And this is the most spectacular aspect of the IMEC project. This is exactly why I think the European Union has established as a priority the deepening and broadening of the relationship with India. This is why Prime Minister Modi came to Athens a few months ago, 40 years after the last visit of an Indian Prime Minister in Athens, and this is why the Greek delegation, when the Prime Minister Mitsotakis went to New Delhi a couple of months ago, exactly to reflect the importance for our foreign policy of India in the rising world. And what I would like to say is that we're working very hard for this. I traveled to New Delhi with no less than 100 business people, and I had the opportunity to talk to them over the flights back and forth. And what I realized was that even business people who always have a feeling of how business operates, they had no idea of the potential and of the upscaling of the current economic situation in India. It's an endless market. There are endless opportunities. But above all, I think there is a nation which is stable and has strong guarantees of security and prosperity. And this is why it's a very secure environment, not only for investments, but also for further relations, people-to-people relations on which we place particular emphasis. When it comes to Greece, we agreed that we're going to double our commerce by 2030. There is a huge space, an ample space, to actually further develop our bilateral trade. But above all, we decided something which is conceptually, I think, the most fundamental, because our two civilizations met thousands of years ago, and now we just revisit this relationship. I know it's really bizarre to say, but I would dare say on an equal footing, although the scale is not exactly the same between the two countries, but there is a mutual respect. There is a lot that we share. We're very like-minded countries when it comes to the fundamentals. We share the fundamental idea of adherence to international law. We do share our concerns about maritime security, about the need to improve the standards of commerce and maritime. And this is why we think in broadly the same way. And this is why we're going to go on with our cooperation. And just a last word concerning IMEC. Greece is the natural getaway from India to Europe. It is the doorstep to Europe. We do have the infrastructure to support IMEC. We have Piraeus, which is among the top European ports and probably the most well-equipped in the Mediterranean. But also we have the northern ports, which are equally important geostrategically. We have developed huge investments in logistics. We have now the infrastructure when it comes to all sorts of domestic and combined transport, with a very strong network of sea and land transport. And this is why I think Greece could offer a huge alternative for the IMEC corridor. And I am absolutely positive what we have established in our bilateral relations in the last few months, it's going to be huge in the future. And that probably in the next Raisina dialogue, we will have established even more agreements. We will have a more solid relationship. And next year here at the epicenter of modern civilization, I would say that next year, Mr. Tsomokos, we could have an even further upscaling of Greece-India relationship. And thanks for your attention. It's always important to have personalities like this panel here to just brief us with contemporary issues. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Foreign Minister, for the opening remarks that framed this discussion. But I will promise you that we will not be discussing India. We will be discussing connecting India to Greece. We are going to be discussing the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. And to discuss that with me, we have the National Security Advisor of Greece, Thanos Dokos. We have Federico Banos-Lindner, Group Senior Vice President for DP World. We have my friend Ebtesam Ketbi, President, Emirates Policy Center, UAE. And we have Ambassador Yannis Zepos, who was ambassador to India between 1997 and 2002. someone who 14 years ago had urged both governments to consider signing a strategic agreement, a strategic partnership agreement, which has fructified 14 years late. But it has fructified nonetheless. So we are going to ask some difficult questions and some questions about possibilities that this corridor poses to different regions and different actors along the route of this project. But let me just first start by making 2 points. India, in the next 10 years, is going to move from $4 trillion to $10 trillion GDP. Many other countries in South Asia and the whole African continent is going to see a similar upward trend in their economic prospects. The volume of trade from India alone is going to more than double in this decade, the trade that's coming towards you. So is the case from East Africa and a very vibrant Middle East, Middle Eastern states that are rediscovering new sectors of growth. All of this requires additional infrastructure. It requires complementary connectivity routes, and it requires the existing ones to function at greater efficiency. This is not a replacement project. This is an additionality that is being added into the international system to cater to the rapid growth of the Afro-Asian century that is going to look for markets towards the north. And of course, the Mediterranean and Greece particularly will need to be ready and prepared to accept and benefit from these flows. So this is not replacing and not against anyone. This is an additionality, as the foreign minister pointed out, into the global system to sustain globalization. Let me also quickly make the second point. The foundation of modern day globalization, global trade, global integration was based on 3 words: Athens, India, and monsoon. It was this mix that created the movement of culture, commerce, and of course, everything else that today defines modern trade. The Middle East was the hub which made this happen. And in many ways, 21st century, where we see a recession in globalization, a recession of integration, is going back to the old times to create a new mantra for modern day contemporary connectivity projects. The same route, Middle East, India, and Greece, or Europe more broadly, are working to create a new impetus. So let me first start with the tough questions, and let me therefore turn to the National Security Advisor. Let me ask you a question, sir. How important is it for Athens to connect to the Asian story, the rise of Asia and Africa? And this is an Asia and Africa that is besides China. So how important is Athens looking at the non-Chinese rise of Asia and rise of Africa? And how comfortable are you with connecting to the Indo-Pacific construct, which is again a political construct, a geostrategic construct, which has both economic and ideological considerations?
Well, first of all, if I were to follow the finest tradition of the British civil service, the only appropriate reaction would be yes, minister, or yes, prime minister, depending on the circumstances. But to your question, this is, as the minister said, this is about a changing world, growing economies. This is about economic connectivity and geopolitical connectivity. So we have multiple regions, Europe, the Middle East, India, you mentioned Africa, but there's also the broader Asia-Pacific region that need to be connected more closely. And you rightly said this is not about competition. This is not about a zero-sum game. This is not about replacing an existing corridor. This is about creating complementary ones because, let's face it, no one likes monopolies. Mm-hmm. This is about having multiple options. It's important for Greece, who wishes to be a key entry point to Europe on this corridor. Obviously, it offers economic and geopolitical advantages, and Greece generally wishes to be both a hub and a transit point of several corridors, be that energy, data, or you name it. Then the second part of your question, this is also geopolitical. So we have, on the European side, NATO and the EU, they do cover specific regions. Then we have trilateral arrangements between Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, Israel, UAE, and other countries. And then on the Indian Pacific side, there is Quad, AUKUS, And also, in the Middle East, you have those informal I2U2, Abraham Accords, Negev Group, and so on and so forth. There are common interests between countries participating in these groupings. This is about increasing stability. This is about economic cooperation. This is about countering malign influences. This is also, and that was discussed in the visit of the Prime Minister, about Greece and India perhaps playing a role in bridging the gap between the global south and the north. So I think there is a lot of ground for cooperation, and Greece is ready to play its part.
I'm going to come back to you on the question of monopoly and how Europe escapes that. But let me turn to our private sector colleague here, Federico. Federico, is there, in your view, and I'm going to ask it starkly, is there a business case for this connectivity project? End of the day, there has to be a business case for any such investment. And do you think the drivers that we just discussed, the rise of many dynamic economies, provides the necessary conditions for people like you to be investing and building these new infrastructure projects?
Let me preface my response by simply commenting that Minister Gerapetritis' remark on this corridor is actually much more than just economic. It's also democratic and cultural and all these sorts of things. But let's put that to the side for a moment, because I know you'll hold my feet to the fire to respond to your question. I think that the IMEC corridor, and indeed any project of a similar nature, is absolutely crucial in order to boost economic growth, in order to procure energy security, in order to ensure that there's investment in infrastructure, which is absolutely critical, particularly in the global south. And for us, and from our perspective, it already helps extend and elevate the existing maritime corridor that already exists between India and the UAE. And we've already seen the success of this route, which has really dramatically increased the number of exports from the region. I mean, the reality is that trade, for example, between UAE and India has reached historical heights just in the last couple of years. You've gone from about 73 billion in 2022 to about 84 billion in trade in 2023. That is a massive increase that really gives them Indian companies and businesses, as well as UAE businesses, the opportunity to compete more effectively in the global market. The CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between UAE and India, also has already had a very positive impact as well, alongside some of the things that we do also as a logistics provider. And even also the UAE-India bridge, which has boosted manufacturing, exports, investment, all of these sorts of things via our Jebel Ali hub. We've already seen Indian companies actually become the second most important partner in terms of volume, so about 44 million metric tons, and in terms of value, the fourth most important, with almost 7 billion just through that hub alone, which is incredible. So it's clear that there is commercial value in expanding this corridor and others like it, and formalize economic ties between the EU, the GCC, and India. And in fact, our chairman and CEO, Sultan bin Sulayem, recently had, as you know, a very productive conversation with Prime Minister Modi, and it became very evident that the political will, the resources, and the intent are all very well aligned. So for companies such as ours that are interested in diversifying trade routes, projects like the IMEC really hold a promise to be as much as a game changer even, and a vital bridge between the Indo-Pacific and the Mid-Atlantic. And details of the practical implementation and the economic viability are yet to be, I think, announced and examined more carefully. But clearly, corridors like the IMEC have incredible advantages. I mean, they help you secure regional supply chains, they increase trade accessibility, they improve trade throughput, they enhance economic unity, all of these sorts of things. For Europe in particular, and very crucial, is the fact that you're able to reduce transport costs by 30 to 40%. This is massive at a time where we have learned through the Trade and Transition Report that we do on a yearly basis with the Economy Impact Unit. at a time where people are seeing this as a major obstacle to increasing their exports. So there's clear that this is a significant advantage and the commercial imperative for the IMEC. And I mean, the minister also mentioned it. Right now, global trade disruption has become the constant. It's not, we're not talking black swan events anymore, right? It's a flock of swans almost. And whether due to geopolitical tension, climate change, anything else like that, the generation and therefore also the diversification of trade routes like the IMEC are absolutely critical.
Federico, I'm going to come back to you on what would be a policy regulatory signal from different governments for encouraging transnational investments and transnational companies like yours to put their money into a project that clearly has a number of risks as well. And I'm going to turn to Ebtesam on some of those risks. Ebtesam, you come from the UAE, you come from the region that is today in the news for the wrong reasons. You have the Gaza challenge and you have tensions with Iran in certain countries. You have the piracy on the seas. You have threats of escalation underway. And yet, when I speak to interlocutors in UAE and Saudi Arabia and other parts of the region, there still seems to be a determination for investing in a project like this for the future. So what are these different dynamics that today are playing out that are affecting both the effectiveness of beginning this project and thereafter the sustaining of this project?
Well, look, Samir, I will start from the crisis, but I also want to explain the UAE vision about kind of that corridors. In fact, the Gaza war, the conflicts in the region, shows that the importance of these corridors, okay? You need them. You need them because you need the connectivity. First, UAE support the project, IMEC, based on the fact that it is consistent with its strategic vision for the region, which stems from the idea that maximizing common economic benefits, which is, this is UAE looking at it, it's a win-win project. And this is can also, all those and has been excluded from the benefits of this, like Iran, like Egypt. If you engage them in this, okay, that might not turn them to a spoiler to a project like that. Also, the trade, the lines enhance the opportunities for peace, coexistence. The minister mentioned people to people. It's part of it because it's not, should not be only stays on the official level. Secondly, also, UAE perceive that project, it's not something competing with the Belt and Road, because UAE also used to be part of that Belt and Road. UAE encourage commercial corridors and lines projects and believes that the region location accommodates all kinds of corridors, not only one corridors, and even that corridors goes to Africa. And UAE economic developments based on that region free of conflicts and wars. And what can bring all the people together is the economic benefits from the projects. In fact, Abrahamic Accords, which UAE was the first signatories of that, it is behind that was the economic project will bring all the region, including Israel. And before that also, UAE laid the ground for that through the project I2U2, which has India and Israel and France in it, right? So believing in connectivity, this is the only way how to face the conflicts in the region. Although the geopolitics affecting the geoeconomics, but Gaza war, yes, I don't say it did not affect, but you remember, Samir, we have that. We started from India through UAE, through Saudi to Jordan and Israel with the food corridor. In fact, we have that food corridor between UAE and India, and it shows a very successful case. So if something happened in the between, I mean, I'm always saying, if the implementation is not good, it doesn't mean the theory is not good, right? So we have to find, and this is, I said in Razina, we always, when you have any kind of project, you have always to calculate that there must be, something will happen, spoilers or other things. If you don't put this in your consideration, of course, you will be a failure.
Ambassador Zepos, let me ask you the tough question. Recently, Italy has decided to exit the BRI. The Chinese presence in this part of the world is seen by many to be monopolistic. I'm using a word that the NSA mentioned. Let me ask you, how does IMEC offer you alternative or room to maneuver or flexibility vis-a-vis the BRI? What is the difference that this kind of a project will bring to the region? What is the different offering that it brings to the people of Greece? And how do you see the geopolitical implications of such a project play out, especially in the Mediterranean?
Thank you, Samir. Let me start by saying that, first of all, the IMEC is a very recent project. So it still has to go through a lot of studying and a lot of will in order to get it going. Obviously, for Greece, this is a corridor that links us. There's a difference between this and the Belt and Road because it links us to the global south. So in fact, the corridor starts from the global south and moves upwards through Egypt or through Saudi Arabia to the Mediterranean and to Greece. So obviously it is a new dimension for us. It's a new corridor, and it is very interesting for us to connect to this idea and to what comes along with the idea. So geopolitically, in fact, as you mentioned, it is true that there are some people around us who are skeptical right now because of the situation in the Middle East, and they're wondering whether this is going to be a serious obstacle for the IMEC to develop further. I think that the idea is brilliant to have this sort of a corridor, and I think that we should work in a positive way, trying to look at it positively, and obviously situations change. What has happened today in the Middle East, let's hope that it will find a new day to it, and we shall go over what is happening so as the countries that are involved and who wish to be involved in this corridor, it is in their planning as well, will be able to participate.
Ambassador, you have also been a big votary of India-Greece ties. How important or how opportune is this moment to change the status of our relationships, and what is driving and defining this moment? What is really different now that you see the prime ministers visit each other's capitals and deepen the relationship? What is happening?
Well, Samir, for me, it's been a very important moment because I have been for years thinking that we have to link closer to each other and develop in all sorts of fields, okay? Be it trade, energy, everything, defense. And this is happening. It started with the visit of your Prime Minister here in August 2023, and then recently our Prime Minister went to India. We are riding a new horse, if I may say. And I am hoping that both sides will look at it positively and will be able to move into the future at different speeds and with different projects.
You know, Greece and horse are not necessarily a story that is well recollected. But let me turn to the NSA, sir. What do you think are the security challenges for something like this to fructify? Key security challenges. Not, you know, you have the Middle East one, but there are others as well, right? Tensions in this region, for example, in the Mediterranean. What is your assessment of the viability of such a project with new actors entering into this geographical domain? And is Athens likely to bet on an IMEC project? Because you're not right now a part of this, but do you see a positive tendency towards participating in this kind of an initiative?
Well, needless to say, much of IMEC will be traversing turbulent territories. There are things we can do about this and hope that by the time IMEC will start being constructed, things will have improved in certain parts of the region, especially the Middle East. But instability is likely to remain a characteristic of this part of the world. So these are things that have to be taken into considerations. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, competition, or it is likely that the project will be perceived as a zero-sum game by some actors who stand to lose if it becomes implemented. I think there are things we can do to prevent this from becoming a dominant perception. But of course, maritime security is going to be an issue. Protection of critical infrastructure from state or non-state actors. And of course, relations between some key members of the IMEC project will have to be managed. So there is obviously a geopolitical risk, and it's difficult to make a projection because we're talking about a project that will take several years to be implemented. But overall, I think it's a manageable geopolitical risk. Now, about Greece. I think the Prime Minister mentioned in his discussions with Prime Minister Modi that he's fully committed to the idea, and we're taking steps to join this club of countries that will invest in the future in building this important corridor.
And therefore, Ambassador, let me turn to our friend Ambassador Zepos again. How important are Greece ports to this important architecture? And are the Greek ports ready to now do business with a different set of actors in the future?
Well, as was mentioned earlier by the Minister of Foreign Affairs himself, the country, once you go through the Suez Canal or you look into the Mediterranean from, let's say, from the Arab side, you will see that the first country that comes along in a maritime route is Greece. And Greece has good ports to offer, either on the western side or the eastern side, and they are developing, and they are good ports with infrastructure that definitely can be advanced necessarily if these choices are made, but there are very good ports that could link easily Indian trade and energy and other things to Eastern and Western Europe, easily.
And do you think the Global Gateway project that is continuing to be mentioned by European leaders, do you think it is ready to participate and support ambitious infrastructure venture like this?
Well, it's a tricky question because you asked me to answer on behalf of major European players. But I think that since world trade is developing and multiplying, energy as well, and IT routes and whatever, it will be obvious that at some stage, yes, it will be feasible, and they will be interested in seeing this happening.
Ebtesam, let me turn to you. This will require investments in various segments of the project, pipelines, rail routes, ports, and of course, interregional connectivity as well. There is an appetite today in the Middle East sovereign funds, both in UAE as well as in Saudi Arabia, the two members of this arrangement, to invest. Is this something that you see continuing, despite the political risks that were outlined by the NSA here?
Samir, I can talk about UAE specifically, which which I know, UAE committed to the project from the first time when it signed that. So, and no, we are living in uncertainty in this region, okay? Committed, yes, of course, in the infrastructure, but also you cannot stop conflict in this region. You cannot predict when is the next conflict or wars that's coming. My worry is not about our region. My worry about the European. If they are committed to that, you know how many EU, okay, and which one of them will agree or disagree their shares on that. This is the main challenges in the European part. And our part is geopolitical. It's not economic, it's not financial.
So it is not the money, it is the geopolitical risk.
For UAE, it's committed, okay? Now, until you reach Israel is now in the problem, where is Gaza war? This is where is the problem. I can, from UAE through Saudi, Bahrain, Saudi, until you reach Jordan, then Israel, here the problem, where we are there. And you cannot predict now where we are also having a problem with the Red Sea. Houthi, I think blackmailing, this is how long it will stay Houthi, and Iran behind that, okay? Because Iran also looked to the IMEC as excluded the Iranian. So also it turned Iran to a spoiler through the Red Sea. There are many challenges, but UAE is committed and believing that, okay, no matter, these are not permanent, can be solved, spoiler can be compensated, okay?
And can be included in certain ways.
And can be included, and can be in the win-win format.
Federico, let me turn to you for the final word. Having listened to all the other speakers, how can transnational private sector actors be catalyzed to work alongside differing political regimes in regions which are clearly interesting, to put it mildly? How can governments ensure that they can elevate your role and your presence in the success of projects like this, of the private sector? This is not going to be done by governments. They can give policy signals. It will be you who will have to do it. So what can be done to make you more excited about this?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, and to Dr. Ebtesam's point, you'd have to be naive not to think that there are going to be challenges to implementing this thing. And competition is for sure one of them. Competition with other routes like the development road, which has this 1,200-kilometer rail link and land link from Basra all the way to the Turkish border. And even the BR is not going anywhere. And despite criticisms around debt levels and these sorts of things, the reality is it has mobilized about $1 trillion through about 3,000 projects associated with it. So it is certainly a competitor, but I agree, competition is probably also a healthy thing. But one key challenge, I think, that governments and private sector are to be aware of is the cost of development. And initial estimates put the cost of each segment somewhere between $3 and $8 billion. And it's not entirely clear who is going to be fronting this cost. So while private investment will likely be called upon to try to cover some of this, and there are a number of private sector players that are along the corridor that will benefit from it, still that does not solve the question. The reality also, and you alluded to this, geopolitical tensions are going to affect timelines, affect the progress. So yes, you're absolutely right. You need to include these in your estimations of what you need to do. What we have seen also is that given wider macro trend, investors have generally become more risk averse. I mean, it's not that everybody's simply opening their billfold and saying, yes, this is a great thing, let's do it. They want to know also that governments are going to be participating in this, that governments are also going to create the supportive policies and the positive and constructive operating environment to make this viable and possible. And this is why we're always engaging governments to ensure that they're open to this collaboration, not only with us, but also with each other, to also restore some of the trust, I think, that has been lost over time.
Point. I think if, I've really run out of time and I'm getting a flag from the side, but I want to come to you because the NSA has intervened. He wants to have the final word. You have it.
Right. About
Europe.
India and the EU. One has to be blind not to see the potential of the Indian economy. Current figures are very low. EU covers 10% of India's imports. India covers 2% of EU's imports. Now, these figures need to change. And I think it's high time to think and to take the next step about the free trade agreement between India and the EU. And in that context, global gateway and funding for big infrastructure projects needs to be discussed between the two sides.
Thank you very much. So please join me in applauding the panel for their wonderful inputs. And